I learned very quickly that silence can be much scarier than yelling. My boss, Devin, had been screaming at people for 3 years straight. It was just his thing. Mess up a report, get yelled at for tea. Devin's screaming fits were legendary at our accounting firm. You could hear him from 3 floors down when he really got going. Everyone dreaded making even the smallest mistake around him. He'd been terrorizing employees for 3 years straight, and nobody had the courage to report him to HR. I once watched him reduce an intern to tears for being 5 minutes late. The poor kid quit the next day. Devin turned bright red when he yelled. He paced behind his desk like a caged animal, slamming his fist down hard enough to rattle his coffee mug. My colleague Cole got a 10-minute screaming session for messing up a report. Another team member endured 20 minutes of verbal abuse for missing a deadline. I was terrified of him like everyone else. I kept my head down, did my work, and tried to stay off his radar. That strategy worked until last Tuesday, when I made the worst mistake of my career. I accidentally sent Patterson's quarterly tax projections to their biggest competitor. Patterson was our biggest client. This mistake could cost us the account and possibly get us sued. Kendra from the Patterson account team discovered the breach immediately. She called me in a panic, then notified Devin. My stomach dropped when I saw Devin's name on my caller ID. My office, now, was all he said before hanging up. The walk to his office felt like my final march to the gallows. I rehearsed apologies in my head, knowing none would be good enough. I expected the worst screaming session of all time. Everyone in the office gave me sympathetic looks as I passed. When I entered Devin's office, he was sitting calmly at his desk. No red face, no pacing, no fist slamming. "Sit down, Marcus," he said quietly. His voice was eerily controlled. I sat across from him, waiting for the explosion. It never came. "You sent confidential Patterson tax projections to their competitor," he stated flatly. Not a question, just a fact. "Yes, I did. It was a terrible mistake. I was working on multiple accounts, and I started explaining." Devin held up his hand to stop me. "This is serious, Marcus. More serious than you realize." He didn't raise his voice once. He just stared at me with cold, calculating eyes. "We'll figure out how to handle this," he said in that same quiet voice. "You can go now." I left his office in a daze. No screaming, no threats, no immediate firing. Cole caught me in the hallway. "You look like you've seen a ghost. What happened in there?" "Nothing," I said. He didn't yell. He barely reacted at all. Cole's eyes widened. "That's not good, man. Not good at all." I nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. The calm was more terrifying than any screaming could have been. Sloan, the senior accountant who'd been mentoring me, pulled me aside later that afternoon. She looked concerned. "I heard about what happened with the Patterson account," she said, "and about your meeting with Devin." I explained how strangely calm he'd been, how he'd barely reacted to news that should have sent him into a rage. Sloane's expression grew more worried. "Marcus, listen to me. When Devin stops yelling, that's when you need to worry." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Yelling is just Devin losing control. When he's quiet like that, it means he's planning something," she explained. A chill ran down my spine. "Planning what?" "I don't know," Sloane said, "but be careful. Document everything you do. Watch your back." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my job security and the Patterson account. What was Devin planning? Why hadn't he fired me on the spot? The questions circled in my mind without answers. I thought about reaching out to Alana in HR but decided against it. I needed more information first. The next morning, Tessa from payroll avoided eye contact with me in the break room. We usually chatted every morning, but today, she hurried past like I was invisible. Something was definitely wrong. The quiet aftermath of my mistake felt more dangerous than any screaming fit. I checked my email constantly for meeting requests or warnings. Nothing came through, which only made me more anxious. By the end of the day, I was convinced Devin was building a case against me. His unusual calm wasn't mercy, it was calculation. I needed to prepare myself for whatever was coming. The Patterson account mistake was bad, but Devin's response was worse. The silence was deafening, and in that silence, I heard the clear message that my days at the firm were numbered. I noticed something strange happening at work the next day. People were having meetings without me. These weren't just random gatherings, they were Patterson account meetings I should have been included in. I walked past the conference room and saw Devin gesturing at a whiteboard. Kendra was there, taking notes. So were 3 other team members who usually worked with me. Nobody had sent me a calendar invite. Nobody had mentioned anything about strategy sessions for our biggest client. When they saw me looking through the glass, Devin quickly closed the blinds. The message was clear. I wasn't welcome anymore. In the break room later that morning, Tessa from payroll practically ran when she saw me. We usually chatted about weekend plans while making coffee. "Morning, Tessa," I said, trying to sound normal. She mumbled something and hurried away without looking at me. That's when I noticed the security badge logs posted on the bulletin board. They were never displayed publicly before. The logs showed after-hours access to the building. My name was highlighted on several entries from the past week. I frowned at the paper. I hadn't been in the office after hours in months. Someone was using my security badge when I wasn't there, or someone had falsified the logs to make it look that way. Early Tuesday morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. I wanted to get ahead on some work before the day started. The lights were already on in my section when I got there. I heard drawers opening and closing near my desk. I rounded the corner to find Devin hunched over my desk, rifling through my bottom drawer. He jumped when he saw me. "Marcus," he said, straightening up quickly. "You're in early." I set my bag down slowly. "What are you doing at my desk?" "Looking for the Patterson files," he said. His eyes darted to the side, a clear tell he was lying. "The Patterson files are all digital," I replied. "They're on the shared drive." Devin nodded too quickly. Right, I forgot. Well, good talk." He walked away without another word. I checked my drawers immediately, but couldn't tell if anything was missing. On Thursday, Jake from IT stopped by my desk. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Hey man," he said quietly. "I thought you should know. Devin asked us to pull copies of all your work emails from the past 6 months." My stomach dropped. "What? Why?" Jake shrugged. "He said it was for a routine security audit, but we don't do those, and he only asked for yours." I thanked Jake for the heads up. He'd risked his job by telling me. That night, I researched company policies on termination and disciplinary procedures. The employee handbook was clear about the steps required. There needed to be documented performance issues. There needed to be written warnings. There needed to be opportunity for improvement. I'd never received any of those things. My performance reviews had always been excellent. The next morning, I tried to speak with Alana from HR. She was usually friendly and approachable, but today she seemed nervous. "I can't discuss this with you, Marcus," she said when I asked about termination procedures. Her eyes kept darting toward Devin's office. "Is something going on that I should know about?" I asked directly. Alana gathered her papers quickly. "I have a meeting. Sorry." I found Sloan in the copy room later that day. She pulled me into an empty conference room when I told her what was happening. "Document everything," she said firmly. "Times, dates, what was said. Keep copies at home, not just on your work computer." "Do you think Devin is building a case to fire me?" I asked. Sloan's expression was grim. "I think it might be worse than that. Just be careful." I went to lunch around noon, making sure to lock my computer before leaving. I always locked it as a matter of habit. When I returned an hour later, something felt off about my desk. Nothing was visibly disturbed, but my chair was at a slightly different angle. I checked my computer and found the activity log. Someone had accessed my files while I was gone, using my own login credentials. That was impossible unless someone had my password. I changed it immediately and wrote down what had happened. The next day, I noticed security cameras in the office that I'd never seen before. They were small, discreet, and pointed directly at my desk. I started keeping a detailed journal of everything unusual, the meetings I wasn't invited to, the conversations that stopped when I entered a room. On Friday morning, I received a calendar invitation from Devin. It was scheduled for that afternoon at 3. The subject line simply read, "Performance Discussion." Zaria from Legal was also invited. My heart raced as I stared at the screen. Legal wasn't involved in regular performance reviews. I printed out all my documentation and made copies. I stored one set in my personal email and gave another to Sloan for safekeeping. "Whatever happens in there," she said, "don't sign anything without reading it carefully. Don't admit to anything you didn't do." The hours until the meeting crawled by. I could barely focus on my work. At 2:55, I walked to Devin's office with a knot in my stomach. This wasn't about the Patterson mistake anymore. It was about something much worse. Devin had been planning this since the moment I'd walked into his office, and he hadn't screamed. The silence hadn't been mercy. It had been calculation. I received a calendar invitation from Devin on Friday morning. The meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m. that same day. The subject line simply read, "Performance Discussion." Zaria, from Legal, was also invited. My heart raced as I stared at my computer screen. Legal was never involved in regular performance reviews. I spent the morning organizing my documentation. I'd been keeping detailed notes since the day Devin had responded so calmly to my Patterson mistake. At lunch, I found Sloan in the break room and showed her the meeting invitation. Her expression darkened immediately. "This isn't good, Marcus," she said quietly. "Having Legal there means they're building something serious against you." I explained everything I'd gathered so far. The strange meetings I wasn't invited to, Devin searching my desk, Jake's warning about my emails. "What should I prepare for?" I asked. "Am I getting fired?" Sloan thought for a moment. "Possibly, but this feels bigger than a simple termination." She advised me to record the meeting if possible, to take detailed notes, to not sign anything without reading it thoroughly. "And don't admit to anything beyond the Patterson email error," she warned. "That was a mistake, not misconduct." The afternoon dragged by painfully. I could barely focus on my work as the clock inched toward 3. At 2:55, I gathered my notebook and headed toward Devin's office. My palms were sweating. My mouth felt dry. Devin's door was closed when I arrived. I knocked twice and heard his voice telling me to enter. The office looked different than the last time I'd been there. The blinds were drawn. The lights seemed dimmer. Devin sat behind his desk with Zaria beside him. They both had serious expressions, and neither stood to greet me. "Marcus, have a seat," Devin said, gesturing to the chair across from him. His voice was still unnervingly calm. On his desk sat a thick manila folder with my name written on the tab in Devin's handwriting. It was at least 2 inches thick. "Do you know why we're meeting today?" Devin asked, placing his hand on top of the folder. I cleared my throat. "I assume it's about the Patterson email incident from last week." Devin exchanged a glance with Zaria. "That's part of it, but there's much more we need to discuss." He opened the folder and turned it around so I could see its contents. The first page was a performance review I'd never seen before. "Over the past year, we've documented a pattern of concerning behavior," Devin said, flipping through pages of what appeared to be performance issues. I leaned forward in shock. "I've never received any of these reviews. These aren't real," Zaria spoke for the first time. "We have copies signed by your supervisor indicating these were discussed with you." I stared at the signatures at the bottom of each page. They looked like Devin's, but I'd never seen these documents before today. "This is the first time I'm seeing any of this," I said firmly. "My annual review 6 months ago was excellent." Devin smiled thinly. "We have evidence suggesting otherwise." He flipped to another section of the folder. This one contained printouts of emails I'd supposedly sent. The emails discussed confidential client information being shared with outside parties. My name was in the signature line. I never wrote these, I said, my voice rising slightly. These are fabricated. Devin's expression remained calm. Our IT department recovered these from the server. They came from your account. Jake's warning suddenly made perfect sense. Devin had been building a paper trail. Let's discuss the Patterson breach, Zarya said, pulling out another document. We believe it wasn't accidental. My blood ran cold. What are you suggesting? Devin leaned forward. We have evidence you've been selling confidential client information to competitors for months. The accusation hung in the air between us. I felt like I couldn't breathe. That's absolutely false. I finally managed. I made one mistake with one email. It was an accident. Zarya pushed a document across the desk toward me. It was labeled, Confidentiality Breach Settlement. We're prepared to handle this quietly, she said. Sign this agreement and we won't pursue criminal charges. I didn't touch the paper. Criminal charges for what? I haven't done anything wrong. Devin's calm facade cracked slightly. We have months of evidence suggesting corporate espionage, Marcus. That's when it hit me. Devin wasn't trying to fire me. He was framing me. He needed a scapegoat for something bigger. The Patterson breach had given him the perfect opportunity. I'd like time to review these allegations, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. And I'd like my own legal representation present. Zarya frowned. That won't be necessary if you cooperate now. This can all go away quietly. I stood up from my chair. I'm not signing anything today. I want copies of everything in that folder. Devin's face hardened. That won't be possible. These documents contain confidential information. Information you're accusing me of leaking, I countered. I need to see what I'm being accused of. Zarya and Devin exchanged another look. She nodded slightly. We can provide redacted copies by Monday, she said, but our offer to settle quietly expires today. I gathered my notebook. Then it expires. I won't sign something admitting to actions I never took. Devin closed the folder with a sharp snap. You're making a serious mistake, Marcus. No, I said, finding my courage. You made the mistake. These documents are fabricated, and I can prove it. I had no idea if I actually could prove it, but I needed time to think, to plan. We'll see you Monday morning, Zarya said coolly, with or without your own counsel. I left the office with my head spinning. The thick folder of fabricated evidence had blindsided me completely. In the hallway, Cole saw my face and immediately pulled me into an empty conference room. What happened? He asked. You look like you're about to pass out. I sank into a chair. Devin is framing me for corporate espionage. He has a folder full of fake evidence. Cole's eyes widened. Jesus, what are you going to do? I need to talk to Sloan, I said, and I need a lawyer, a real one, not the company's counsel. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a daze. The accusations were so outlandish, yet Devin had clearly been planning this for days. The Patterson email mistake hadn't been the beginning. It had simply accelerated whatever scheme Devin had already set in motion. I found Sloan as she was leaving for the day. Her face grew increasingly concerned as I explained what had happened. This is worse than I thought, she said. Devin isn't just trying to fire you. He's setting you up to take a fall for something bigger. I nodded, the reality of my situation sinking in. I need to figure out what he's really covering up. And you need to do it fast, Sloan added, before Monday morning. I left work that evening with a single thought repeating in my mind. Devin had made a mistake in giving me the weekend. He thought he'd frightened me into submission. Instead, he'd given me time to build my defense. I wasn't going down for something I didn't do, and if Devin wanted a fight, he was about to get one. I met Kendra in the parking garage early Saturday morning. She looked nervous as she handed me a thick envelope. These are copies of the original Patterson emails, she whispered. The timestamps don't match what Devin showed legal. I thanked her for risking her job. She nodded once and hurried back to her car. The documents proved something incredible. The Patterson breach had actually occurred from Devin's computer, not mine. I called Sloan immediately. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown, away from any potential workplace surveillance. This isn't the first time Devin has done this, Sloan said after examining Kendra's documents. He's been setting up scapegoats for years. She pulled out her own folder. Inside were testimonials from 3 former employees who'd been fired under suspicious circumstances. Each time Devin made a serious mistake, he found someone else to blame, Sloan explained. He builds elaborate cases against them. I flipped through the pages in disbelief. Why hasn't anyone stopped him? Fear, documentation, his position, Sloan said, but this time he got sloppy. He never expected you to fight back. We spent the rest of the weekend gathering evidence. I contacted Jake from IT, who agreed to meet me Sunday afternoon. Jake brought server logs showing when files had been accessed. The timestamps matched perfectly with Devin's badge entry records. He's been using your login credentials after hours, Jake confirmed. That's why those security logs were suddenly posted. Jake also provided copies of the falsified emails Devin had created. They all traced back to a single IP address, Devin's home computer. By Sunday night, I had assembled an ironclad case. Devin hadn't just framed me. He'd committed multiple felonies doing it. I arrived at work early Monday morning. I went straight to Alana's office in HR with my evidence folder. I need to speak with you and the board immediately, I told her. It's about Devin and corporate fraud. Alana's eyes widened as I laid out the evidence. She made 3 phone calls in rapid succession. Within an hour, the company's entire executive team had assembled in the main conference room. I presented everything I discovered. The board members exchanged grim looks as I showed them the server logs, the falsified documents, and the testimonials from former employees. The Patterson breach was Devin's mistake, I explained. He accidentally sent the email, then built this elaborate frame-up to protect himself. The CEO, a woman I'd only seen at holiday parties, spoke first. Where is Devin now? Where is Devin? Where is Devin now? In his office, Alana replied. Should I bring him in? The CEO shook her head. Not yet. I want security to secure his computer first. 2 security officers were dispatched immediately. The rest of us waited in tense silence. 20 minutes later, Devin was escorted into the conference room. His face went pale when he saw me sitting with the executive team. What's going on here? He demanded, his voice rising to the familiar yelling pitch we all knew. The CEO remained calm. We're placing you on administrative leave, Devin, pending investigation into serious allegations. Devin's face turned the familiar bright red I'd seen so many times before. This is ridiculous! Whatever Marcus told you is a lie! The server logs don't lie, the CEO replied. Neither do the email timestamps or the badge access records. Devin collapsed into a chair. For once, he had nothing to say. Zarya, who had been taking notes throughout the meeting, finally spoke up. I was misled about the case against Marcus. She looked at me directly. I apologize. I was presented with what appeared to be solid evidence of misconduct. The CEO stood and addressed the room. Devin will be escorted from the building. His access is revoked, effective immediately. I sat in stunned silence as Devin was led away by security. His final glare in my direction contained all the rage he'd normally have screamed. Later that afternoon, I received a call from Patterson himself. He wanted to meet about the breach. I expected to be apologizing for the company's mistake. Instead, he thanked me for uncovering the truth. Honesty matters more than perfection, Patterson said. We're keeping our business with your firm because of your integrity. The next week moved at lightning speed. Devin's office was emptied. His files were reviewed by a forensic accounting team. They discovered he'd been covering up mistakes for years. The Patterson breach was just the latest in a long pattern. By Friday, I received a call from the CEO asking me to come to her office. I was certain I was about to be thanked and dismissed. Instead, she offered me Devin's position. We need someone with integrity to rebuild that department, she explained. I accepted on one condition, that the company culture would change. No more screaming, no more public humiliation. The CEO agreed immediately. That toxic environment should have been addressed years ago, she admitted. My first act as department head was to call a team meeting. Everyone looked nervous as they filed in, expecting another Devin. Things are going to be different now, I told them. Mistakes will happen. We'll fix them together, not hide them. The relief in the room was palpable. Tessa from payroll actually cried. Cole gave me a thumbs up from the back row. Sloane smiled proudly from her seat. Told you his silence was more dangerous than his yelling, she whispered as the meeting ended. She was right. Devin's calculated silence had nearly destroyed my career. His yelling had been the mask that hid his true nature. The firm hired a workplace culture consultant. We implemented new feedback systems that encouraged honesty without fear. 6 months later, our department's performance had improved dramatically. People weren't afraid to admit mistakes early, before they became disasters. The Patterson account grew to become 30% of our business. Kendra was promoted to lead their service team. Jake received a commendation for his ethical handling of the IT evidence. Alana implemented new HR protocols to prevent future abuses. As for me, I kept Devin's office but removed the door. I wanted everyone to know they could approach me anytime. The walls were thin enough that people could hear conversations, but never yelling. That sound was permanently banned from our floor. Sometimes silence is dangerous, but the right kind of quiet, the kind built on trust rather than fear, can transform an entire workplace. Devin's screaming had terrorized us for years. His silence had nearly framed me for crimes I didn't commit. But in the end, it was the quiet courage of people like Kendra, Jake, and Sloane that revealed the truth and changed everything.